Oh God, Dane.
After examining some of the most broken characters in RPGs, I started asking myself, what are the most broken titles in this genre? To clarify, when I say broken, I don't mean technically unplayable, I mean unbalanced. Which RPGs are so disbalanced that when playing you become a god? For this list, I considered a game in its entirety. All 10 of these titles don't just contain one way to break them, though I'll be focusing on some of the most insane strategies. So let's get into it. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, and if you want to join the Local Dane family and request your own video, consider becoming a Patreon member. Number 10. The original Fallout had some major exploits, but its sequel, Fallout 2, happens to be the most broken title in the series. Not only are guns like the Bozar easily accessible and make the game a cakewalk, but you can actually get the endgame best equipment possible at level 1. This is attained via the Navarro run, a quest that has you infiltrate the Navarro base. This is done via save scumming across the world map, getting to San Francisco, stealing infinite gold, and accepting the Navarro quest. Save scum your way there, enter the facility, don't attack anyone inside, and gather your power armor and the quest items, then head back and collect your bounty. After this, head over to the Toxic Caves to retrieve the best rifle, and voila! Without leveling up once, you have all the best gear in the game. The rest of this title is a complete cakewalk from this point forward. Number 9. The Lord of the Rings: The Third Age is not a game that comes to mind when talking about broken titles. Not only is it an obscure PS2 title, but it's pretty much a worse version of the far superior title, Final Fantasy X. Interestingly enough though, this title has some of the worst balancing in skills and party members of almost any other PS2 title on the market. The main way this is achieved is through abilities. The Elven Warrior Idrial gains a spell very early in the game called Aura of the Valor. If cast, it stays into effect until it's either activated or the encounter ends. If cast on a party member, they will revive upon dying with full HP, full AP, and they will be up next in the turn order. Now that may sound pretty busted, but consider that this spell can be cast on Idrial herself. Because of the turn order mechanic, this makes her unkillable. Cast this spell on turn 1, if she dies, she'll revive, and you just cast it again. Once she unlocks Frenzy, she actually gains the ability to cast twice, meaning that not only will she be unkillable, but she'll get attack in every time as well. So that's one character, but what about the others? Well, the dwarf party member, Hadhod, can use a spell that blocks a certain amount of damage. About mid-game, he can cast this on the entire party. The real issue here is that if you systematically buff his intelligence, the game isn't balanced towards that strategy. This means that all enemies, including bosses, will do 0 damage. Oh, you want to hear more? Okay. Barathor, the main character of the game, learns an ability called Fellowship's Grace, which restores the party's AP, including his own. Coupled with one of his first abilities, Company of Might, he will be able to indefinitely regenerate the party's AP, making the spam casting of Aura of Valor and Hadhod's spells possible. Overall, this title is absolutely busted, and with these combinations, the game just gives up. Number 8. Yet another game players don't realize is broken beyond belief is Suicune 5. You don't even need to try here. This title throws overpowered, ridiculous characters capable of souling the entire story at you at the beginning. First of all, any character with 3 open rune slots is capable of receiving a 50% attack boost with the power rune, then have that damage doubled with the double edge rune, then have that damage boosted for the first 3 rounds of the fight with the boost rune. With the right setup, you won't only not get damaged, but you'll end the fight long before the 3-turn limit is up. But let's talk about some of the characters. A light game character named Ernst uses the Beast rune. This rune has him in a weakened beast state for the first turn. Once you've transformed though, Ernst has an ability that unbalances all enemies. This has 100% accuracy and works on every enemy including the final boss. Using this after the first turn can essentially softlock all enemies. A mid-game character that is so overpowered that it's amazing he was even thrown into the game at all is Richard. Richard can block, counter, or dodge physical attacks by 90%. Since magic attacks are relatively rare until the end game, this means that most enemies will be dispatched by him almost instantly. Give him a Firefly rune, and you negate his magic defense weakness and have a god. The final character that is just too powerful is Zerase. She's an early game companion, and you gain her automatically through the story. Suicune 5 literally hands her to you. If given the immensely broken Magic Absorb rune, and the Flowing Room. Zurase can spam one of the strongest spells in the game nearly from the beginning. And speaking of the Magic Absorb Room, this is easily exploitable for magic users who have a free right-hand slot like Leon or Zurase. This gives you infinite MP, which means that you will easily spam the strongest spells constantly. If you employ these strategies, this game is more than a cakewalk. Number 7. Xenoblade Chronicles 2. If we were considering the vanilla version of this game, it would still be broken. In this title, you draw blades in a sort of gacha style mechanic. Many of these blades are busted, but what's crazy is 2 of the most powerful blades in the original version happen to be available to the player via the story. Mithra is the MC's main blade, and she is a crit machine. Given the right setup, she can not only crit, but self-heal herself by a percentage of crit damage. Throw on the fact that Pyra's equipment counts towards Mithra's loadout, and you have the best blade in the game. The second blade is the Poppy series, which is just absolutely broken. Poppy is a customizable blade in the game and comes in 3 varieties, the final variety being the single best blade in the entire title. It's a lot more complicated than I have time to explain, but here's the essentials. Poppy can get the entire break, topple, launch, and smash drive combo. She can increase her damage by 100% at full affinity, she can beat any element including the rare light element or the busted fire element, and the speedy sword attack hits 3 times then breaks the enemy, essentially creating a never-ending loop of locked damage. Anyway, as if that wasn't enough, the DLC of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 absolutely obliterates this title's difficulty. Crescent is a blade you can access from the beginning, and though she'll lose her usefulness in the late game, her ability to heal the entire party while increasing damage in multiple ways is insane. Corvin, another starting DLC blade, is one of the best blades in the entire game, and he is literally handed to you at the beginning. He can increase evasion, attack, do some of the highest damage in the game, and gives you early access to Smash. I could keep going, but I think I'll end with Fiora and Shulk, who, though a late game blade, can reach the highest damaging numbers in the game by a long shot. Fiora is essentially a better version of Mithra, and that's saying a lot. Number 6. When Pokemon first hit the Game Boy in 1996, it actually broke society as we know it. Not only did the games explode in popularity, but the anime took off and Pokemon cards became so notorious that schools had to ban them. Now the hype is understandable. This game to this day is still absolute gold. It's also programmed using Spit and Dreams. There are so many mechanics that either don't work or work way too well. Case in point, the Psychic type. Every Pokemon has a type that determines their elemental weaknesses and strengths. Since Psychic type weaknesses were Bug and Ghost, 2 typings that were so rare, with Bug types only having a handful of Bug type damaging moves, this made Psychics unstoppable. But that's not all. You see, coding actually made Ghost type moves ineffective to Psychics instead of doing double damage. Another broken mechanic in this game is its special stat and the agility stat. In Red and Blue version, the special defense and special attack stats are combined, meaning that Pokemon types that focus on using the special stats, such as Psychic or normal typings, were insanely powerful compared to types that didn't use the special stat. The agility stat in the original game was tied to critical hits. So when you take a Pokemon like Alakazam, with his Psychic typing and insane speed, he becomes a broken mess. Consider that special stat. Moves that improved it became game-breaking as well, like Amnesia. I also want to bring up the Paralysis and Status Effect moves. Sleep and Poison trivialize any battle, and the ongoing attacking moves like Wrap, Bind, Clamp, and Fire Spin just make things ridiculous. These moves aren't only broken because of their scratch damage, but the fact that in the first gen, it takes a turn to get out of them, essentially signaling the player when to lock their opponent up once more. The final mechanic of this game is the X Accuracy item, which essentially gives you 100% accuracy when used. This is an insane oversight, as a move like Fissure, one hit kills almost everything in the game, and the only thing keeping it from breaking this title was its low accuracy. Throw on X Accuracy to a Dugtrio who has high speed, and you pretty much win every match. Number 5. Castlevania Symphony of the Night has so many exploits that watching a speedrun without an explanation looks like a fever dream. The devs were worried that Castlevania games in the past were too difficult, so they threw in an equipment and leveling system which broke the formula completely. In a good way. At the beginning of the game, when you enter this room, you will have your late game equipment stripped away, leaving you defenseless. That is, unless you do this. Boop. Now you have some of the best equipment in Symphony. Attacking with the Alucard Shield and Shield Rod, which you can obtain early, allows you to become invincible while simultaneously healing yourself and damaging the enemy. This is essentially an unkillable build, and with patience will take out every single boss in the game. Another famous exploit is using the Chrysogrim sword, which isn't even an exploit, it's just a broken weapon found in the game. This thing hits 4 times in succession and can be swung as fast as you can mash the attack button. Equip one to both hands and simply watch the game give up. The final exploit I want to bring up is the Jewel Knuckles, which is a very powerful weapon you can obtain early through a simple trick. This weapon attacks rapidly and has some of the highest crit chance in the game. But here's the trick, you can power level using this weapon. If you place yourself behind this enemy and attack this spike ball by just holding down the attack button, you can quickly and efficiently max out your levels. Everything I've said doesn't even take into account the New Game Plus Murasame exploit and about 100 other things. Number 4. Elder Scrolls Morrowind is a busted game. There are so many exploits in this title that it's actually difficult to decide which ones to talk about. For example, during the campaign of the game, you'll contract a disease called the Corpus disease. Until it's cured, the disease actually permanently decreases your mental attributes while permanently boosting your physical attributes. This starts 1 stat per in-game day and increases from there. If you wait for an ungodly amount of in-game days, you'll have nearly max physical stats while your mental ones are at 0. That's okay though, just heal yourself of the disease and all your mental stats will return. Easy. The true broken aspect of this game though is the alchemy system. You see, in this title, you can brew potions from materials that increase your stats temporarily. The potency of these potions is determined by the materials collected, but also by your intelligence stat. The hilarious part of this is that you can brew potions that increase your intelligence stat, meaning you can very easily brew a strength potion that lets you one-hit every enemy in the game, or an acrobatic potion that lets you jump across the entire map. I haven't even mentioned easily obtained infinite gold and experience or invincibility builds using the Chameleon enchantment. This game is plain broken. Number 3. Final Fantasy II may be the most famous broken RPG in the history of gaming. Its exploits are well known, but let's dive into what made this game a beautiful yet broken mess. FF2 tried to differentiate itself from its predecessor by introducing a more story-driven narrative, set characters, and a well-intentioned stat system. You see, the idea behind this system was that the more a player used magic, or healed, or attacked with a sword, the better their stats in that area would become. Actions ticked a point system that leveled your stats according to your decisions. The exploit is that with a bit of intentional usage and some grinding, the player could easily manipulate their stats into being unbearably broken. The most common method is getting into a battle with a weak enemy and having your party members attack and heal each other. If you equip 2 shields, your characters can attack without doing any damage. The experience is determined by how long a battle goes on for, so if you artificially extend a battle, attacking each other in the process, in a couple hours you will have max stats before even reaching the first town. Another interesting mechanic here is that magic spells grow in potency the more you use them, but status effect spells like Death, Toad, or Teleport grow in accuracy the more you use them. Almost every enemy and boss is affected by Toad, so if you grind that up, you have an instant win button. Overall, even with some fixes in the GBA version, this title is notoriously busted in all the right ways. Number 2. Xenoblade Chronicles X may not come to mind as one of the most broken RPGs in video game history. But the more you dive into this title, the more you realize that it's practically a playground for a god. The main reason for this is the overdrive mechanic. Specifically the ground-based overdrive mechanic. In Xenoblade X, you have your avatar character that runs around the map. Later in your playthrough, you receive large robots called Skells. Now, according to the game, Skells are the most powerful option, but this is entirely true. You see, if built right, the overdrive mechanic when outside of your Skell provides this game's optimal damage, making every single super boss a one-hit kill. Why this works is that the overdrive can be buffed with multipliers and be reserved for boss fights, allowing you to set up on a regular enemy. Now, overdrives aren't the only exploit here. There are so many others, like an infinite TP build using 3 augments or combining different class skills to produce an unstoppable warrior. The most infamous and probably the single most broken build in Xenoblade history is the Ether Blossom Dance build, which combines the dual gunner class and swordman class into a super boss mowing machine, which ends up being even better than the most optimal scale builds. And speaking of scales, they are absolutely busted as well and can be exploited in a whole host of ways. Hopefully we see this title ported to the Switch too. Number 1. Final Fantasy VIII's development must have been a fever dream. This title has so many experimental mechanics that were obviously rushed. Luckily, the broken nature of this title only serves to make it stand out among the many titles of the franchise. Man, where do I start? So first of all, enemy level scales in this game, meaning that no matter how much you grind, the enemies will always match your current level. The only check on this are bosses, which have a minimal level. Because of this, leveling is pretty much obsolete, and the less you level, the easier the game is. That is, if you're abusing the junction system. The junction system is what really pushes this game over the edge. By junctioning magic that you draw from enemies, you are able to boost your stats, level up your GFs in order to unlock certain stat slots, equip those slots with high level magic, and voila, you have a busted party member. Now, one of the fastest ways to do this is by unlocking Quizzicottle's card mod early and modding rare cards into high level spells. This pretty much gives you end game stats before the first dungeon. Another busted aspect is the weapon system. Instead of finding multiple weapons to equip, characters possess a single weapon in which you upgrade using items. It is entirely possible to get Squall's ultimate weapon before the end of Disc 1 via a few interesting methods. This, of course, serves to bust this title wide open. The final broken mechanic I'll speak about are the limit breaks. These are the most powerful attacks in the game and can be used to one-shot most bosses with the right setup. There are so many examples of how this is abusable, but here are a few of them. Selfie's The End is an instant death spell that works on every enemy that isn't undead. Zell's Limit Break Duel can be used to do over 1,000,000 points of damage. Squall's Renzo Kuken with Lionheart can be spammed for tons of damage. Irvine's shot with the right type of ammo will obliterate most enemies. Keep your party members' HP in the yellow or red and spam these attacks to make this game an absolute cakewalk. And there you have it, the 10 most broken RPGs. Thank you to all my Patreon members, and if you'd like to request your own top 10 list, become a member today by clicking on the link below. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you all later.